Welcome to the ultimate Heng Blade build guide for where winds meet. In this video, we are going to highlight everything you need to know in order to succeed with this weapon. I'm talking about the skills and abilities for the weapons themselves, the prioritized attributes to tune for with your gear and weapons, ideal gear sets, combos, inner ways, and everything else in between. If you find this video helpful or if you learned something new, then please consider liking and subscribing as well. Okay, with that being said, let's jump into things. So first things first, let's talk about the weapons themselves that you'll be using in this build. Although I am calling this a Heng Blade build, technically it can be considered a Stone Split Strength build, and we are utilizing the Snow Parting Blade, also known as the Heng Blade, and then also the Phalanx Bane Blade. Both of these weapons will be used in this build, and the primary DPS that you'll be utilizing is going to be primarily, once again, through the Heng Blade. With that being understood, let's jump into some of the skills and abilities and gain a better understanding of what each of these two weapons can actually offer us. So first things first, let's talk about light attacks and charged attacks. You can see from the little animation there, the Heng Blade has a basic attack and it actually has some decent range compared to some other weapons, which is great. One thing that's interesting though is that if you do a slight charge of the light attack, you'll see that there's 4 quick attacks that go with it. So again, when we talk about the Heng Blade, we can really talk about speed, right? You're doing lots and lots of swings and dishing off damage very, very quickly. Each of those swings are not going to dish off a ton of damage, but it will be quick, consistent damage, which is what this build is all about. I also want to call out the fact that the Heng Blade build really is a bit of a flexible build, as it really strongly works well off of deflections. You can see even right here, after a successful deflection, you can press this to unleash a rapid forward slash, dealing a portion of damage, and also restoring something known as blade momentum. Blade momentum is going to be your primary resource when it comes to both the Snow Parting Blade and the Phalanx Blade. So just keep that in mind when actually playing these weapons and utilizing the build as a whole. The biggest thing is that you want to make sure you have a decent amount of blade momentum, because that will allow you to use some other abilities such as this special skill. Right off the bat, you can see that this special skill is known as Fleeting Trace, and it consumes 2 bars of blade momentum. So you have to keep in mind that you want to make sure you are intertwining deflections, light attacks, charged attacks in between all of your special skills and martial arts skills. You can't only rely on these abilities. You have to really try to have a balancing act between the abilities as a whole. Also, keep in mind the Phalanx Bane Blade also utilizes this same currency, right? So if we take a closer look, you can scroll down a little bit and let's see. You can see right here, it consumes 2 bars of blade momentum when you use a charged skill. Let's not jump directly into that, but I did want to call out the fact that this currency, this blade momentum, is going to be used for both weapons, regardless of which one is in your hand. So now that we know that light attacks are important, we've got blade momentum as a primary, basically currency is the way I would view it when it comes to utilizing these special attacks. Let's talk about the special attacks themselves. So we've got Fleeting Trace, right? And you can see the animation there. It's a bit of a burst type of damage. There are some inner ways that you can utilize to burst, to increase that amount of burst damage as well, but we'll get into that down the road. We also have the General's Bane. You can see the mobility associated with this one. This is a bit of a safety net too, because as you can tell, you gain some brief invincibility there, which can really help you in PvP situations or boss battles. There are some inner passion effects as well that can really just lead to more damage output altogether. Again, I'm not going to jump into the specifics yet. We will once we actually talk about the rotation. But those are the basics when it comes to the Snow Parting Blade. If we take a look at the Phalanx Bane Blade, I want you guys to think of this as just a giant Mo Blade, right? We've seen these. There's a few other options out there already. You've got the light attacks and you've got the heavy charged attacks that are just very, very slow. However, deals quite a bit of damage, quite a bit more when compared to one attack from one attack to this. But again, These are much quicker, less damage. These are much slower, but more damage. So there is a bit of a balancing effect when it comes to that. The special skill with the Phalanx Bane Blade is called the Legion Summoner. You can see right there, it's a little bit of a charge. You gain the Iron Guard effect, and it really is a bit of a safety net. I like using this if I am stuck on cooldowns, but primarily if I am dishing off damage, you bet I've got the Snow Parting Blade out for most of the fight. You also have Soul Burning. Again, we're not going to jump into the specifics, but I do like utilizing this when jumping into like large mobs or trying to just get some crowd control going and kind of control the fight if it comes out of my hands. With that being said, the last thing I wanted to call out on this screen is understanding kind of like the primary attributes that you want to keep in mind with this build altogether. So if you go ahead and actually click martial art talents, it's going to call out your current equipment and like your tuned gear and everything, and how much of each of these different buckets you're getting the most out of. So for example, physical attack up, right? I can see that if I have at least 150 agility, I can get an increase in overall minimum physical attack, which is great for this build, right? So when tuning my gear, I would like to have either minimum physical attack or agility in some of my pieces to make sure I'm getting the most out of this martial art. We also have critical damage up, right? So when blade momentum is higher than 1 bar, increase critical damage based on the critical rate up to 21%. So again, take a look at your critical rate. What you want to do is base off of this buff, try to make sure you have at least 1 bar at all times. I'm not talking about spending the entire bars of all of your blade momentum all at once, because you're going to be dishing off less DPS with that critical damage until you get that 1 bar again. So again, keep that in mind. And I apologize, I know this is a lot of talking before I get into the good stuff, but it's very important to kind of understand these specifics when you're putting your build together. Additionally, as we all know, when it comes to tuning our gear, we can get specific martial art type of attributes like stone split damage bonuses, right? So you can get minimum or maximum stone split attack. That is all very helpful as well when it comes to this build. So when tuning your gear, remember minimum physical attack, maximum physical attack, stone split attack, agility, and even just power in general will help when it comes to dishing off as much DPS as possible with the Heng Blade. Okay, enough of that. Now let's get into some more interesting stuff. Now let's start talking about inner ways for this build. First things first, morale chant. You're going to want this leveled up as close to tier 6 as possible. If you can hit T6, even better. I will probably get there next week, but again, this is kind of the locked and loaded. You want this for most builds, including this one. Next up, you want the Frostclad Knight. If you are not sure how to unlock this inner way note, check out the link in my description. It kind of covers how to unlock this one as well as all of the other new Heng Blade inner way notes, and it's very, very easy. So check it out and unlock it if you haven't already. Quick mention too, chances are if you're watching this, these newer inner way notes are going to be low leveled. If you plan on making this build your main build, then I highly recommend that you consider converting some of the previous inner way notes into the new ones that you are required for this build. For example, if I am going to take a break from my Infernal Twin Blades, I could use this specific inner way note and convert them into 478 Frostclad Knight notes, which again would really allow me to upgrade this one and take advantage of all of these additional passive buffs. Long story short, the higher tier these inner way notes are, the more DPS you will deal with this build. So again, Morale Chant and Frostclad Knight are both required, and there's one other required one that you want to make sure you use, and that is Throat Piercing Art. This one is more so focused on light and heavy attack varied combos, so when you're dishing off light, heavy, deflections in between, things like that, you are basically allowing you to reduce the overall kind of like physical buffer that your opponent has. To be more specific, when you deal direct damage, you are ignoring 2 points of their physical resistance and also increasing your physical damage by 2%. You can stack this up to 3 times, so we're talking about 6 points of physical resistance decreased and 6% increased critical damage, which really does bump up the overall damage output by a good chunk. So again, these 3 are required. Same thing with this one. The more you upgrade, the more benefits you're going to get. And these can really make or break builds. I mean, this one alone increases the amount of stacks from 3 to 5, which does have a big impact on overall DPS. For your 4th and final inner way note for this build, you have a few options. Some people like to use Invigorated Warrior, especially if they are using this build for PvP specific content. To be more specific, if you have this at T6, this is a great option. If it's T5 or below, you honestly may want to consider utilizing a different option, such as Breaking Point, and in some cases, you may even want 5-fold bleed, but again, this is more so for those more early and beginner players. But realistically, you probably want to use Breaking Point or Invigorated Warrior to really dish off as much damage and maximize survivability as well. Now, although I know most of you guys love the Heng Blade, the start of this rotation is actually with this big boy right here. And the main purpose behind that is that we are trying to basically increase our overall survivability and damage output by picking up this buff. You can see on the bottom, this little icon is going to pop up, and this buff is 30 seconds long, which honestly is pretty massive when it comes to in-game combat. So keep that in mind as well. But to be a little bit more specific, let's jump into the Develop tab and just walk through the first few steps of what you're actually going to be going through. So again, when you are starting a battle, it is between you and your enemy. The first thing you're going to want to utilize is a gap closing ability. And most players like to actually use the Flute Mystic skill. And then they will parry cancel the Flute and move into the Iron Armor Guard Soul special skill right here, which starts that ongoing buff. That buff is going to help you just survive the fight, especially when you get the Heng Blade out and dish off lots of damage. Once you drop this buff, people typically use the Soul Burning ability just once real quick before they swap over to the Heng Blade. So let's just walk through that quick intro really quick. Let's say I'm going over to this enemy, right? I've got this big boy out. I'm going to go ahead and use Flute, right? Cancel, drop the buff, and then I'm going to double tap this before I move over to my Heng Blade. This is where the Heng Blade rotation really starts to kick in. But again, I wanted to go kind of slow there so you guys kind of know how you're going to be starting these battles. Now, the actual rotation for the Heng Blade goes by very, very quickly, and it can be complicated at first, but you will pick up on it. And I will call out right now that this is a little bit different from some of the CN players, but I found some success with it. There's probably a million different ways you can actually do this and still be successful, but let me know in the comments below on your rotation and something that you think it's actually worth testing out. So with that being said, I also wanted to call out that the inner ways have a major impact on this rotation. To give you a little bit of an example, for example, the Frostclad Knight, if you unlock this to tier 3, you can see that the Heng Blade dual weapon skill, so essentially when you swap weapons to your Heng Blade, it can activate the Snowbreak Spring, and it can actually impact your overall rotation and damage numbers. This is the same when it comes to every single inner way in this build. So depending on how high leveled each of these inner ways are, will have a direct impact on your damage output. So if you take a closer look at the rotation on the right side of the screen, this is what you probably will want to practice. I recommend going over to a dummy like I am and actually just testing out everything step by step and seeing what feels right for you, because it might be a little bit different based on who's actually playing this build. Again, it's very, very different based on everybody's kind of ideal gameplay. So it will be a little bit different on how you actually want to play, especially if you are against another player. The other big thing is the fact that, hey, I'm playing against a static stump in the ground, basically, right? The Heng Blade basically powers itself through parries. So in PvE, when it's like a world boss or just open mobs, or even in PvP situations, if you can sprinkle in parries throughout this rotation, the overall damage output will be even more powerful. So keep that in mind as well. And just including the overall importance of varied combos and light charge attacks will boost your overall damage numbers tremendously. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Again, this is very new to the global server, and chances are this rotation may change down the road, but this is what's fun for me. This was what feels smooth so far while playing this weapon, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And that really covers it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts, concerns, or comments about this build, let me know in the comments below and we'll chat about it. I think this overall new weapon being entered into the global community is going to really change up the PvP scene in my opinion, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.